or racists who just as bizarrely saw skin colour as a marker of access to power and privilege. Our religious, political, social, economic and legal systems once considered human slavery, the inferior status of Indigenous peoples and women, to be perfectly legitimate and indeed necessary for the proper functioning of society. It took lengthy social justice campaigns to challenge powerful vested interests and to change societal views. Of course, I am not suggesting that this work is complete. Clearly, there is still much work to be done. But speciesism is as wrong as sexism and racism. This is the truth. This is the challenge for progressives in the 21st century. Walking and chewing gum. It's at this point that social justice advocates are likely to bristle. Why should I put my energies into animals when there are still, insert the client group, injustices? My response is what I call the walking and chewing gum argument. I don't stop being a lesbian feminist activist with a fierce interest in workers' rights just because I recognise that human laws allow cruelty to animals. In the course of my working week, I am capable of running a workshop on the cruelty of live animal export, partnering with meat workers to support employment in local abattoirs, and engaging in media interviews on same-sex marriage or the prevalence of domestic violence in rural communities. Yesterday, I appeared before the Howe Inquiry into insecure work. The day before, I attended a forum on domestic violence. However, even if I specialised in animal law advocacy, which eventually I hope to do, wouldn't it be silly to criticise me for that, just as it would be silly to criticise an environmental lawyer for their specialisation, as if they are too uncaringly indulgent in their concerns for threatened species and river systems? But in reality, I think this argument is raised because of repressed discomfort with the recognition that we humans benefit from animal cruelty in its many forms. Cheap meat, drug trials, a fun day out at the races. Social justice advocates don't like to be on the wrong side of injustice, and for those that have always looked away, it can be a pretty confronting knowledge. Applying the framework. So, where do we go from here regarding a social justice framework for animals? It is generally accepted that social justice is based on 4 interrelated principles: equity, rights, access, and participation. Obviously, the greatest challenge for animal law is that our clients cannot speak and will never have capacity. Under our current system, at best, we may assume a guardianship role, where we gather the best scientific evidence available to determine what is in the best interests of a chicken or a cow or a rat. There's some great work being done in the emerging field of wild earth law, and I'm not going to say too much about that now that I realise you've had a speaker here this morning on that topic, but essentially we are looking at how animal law can fit within the framework of wild law. In the meantime, we are left working with our extremely inadequate and flawed animal welfare laws. Equity, getting a fair share. Due to human actions, animals do not get a fair share of the resources of this planet. We are destroying habitat and causing extinctions at unprecedented rates. Intensive factory farming practices are completely inequitable in terms of the treatment of animals. Due to accelerated breeding programs, the life expectancy of a meat chicken is now 49 days, compared with a potential lifespan of 6 to 10 years. We allocate for them a mere 1.5% of their possible life. I know of no starker example of inequality. And the same calculations can be done for pigs slaughtered at 24 weeks with a possible 15-year lifespan, and sheep killed at 25 weeks with a possible 12-year lifespan. Would we ever accept as equitable a society that routinely consigns its human underclass to death at 18 months of age? Rights. Should we grant animal rights or just protect their needs? This is a fertile ground for argument in animal law circles. There are lengthy debates about the various merits of pursuing a rights-based agenda, or whether a welfarist model is more pragmatic, whether greater chances of success in improving animals' lives in an anthropomorphic world means we best settle for something less. Will the lives of animals improve while we view them as property rather than as legal persons? There is one novel argument which says that we can maintain the legal concept of animals as property, with animals having an equitable self-interest in how they are treated. An example of the welfarist approach is the widely recognised 5 freedoms as approved by the European Union. They are also cited in the Australian Welfare Strategy, and they provide valuable guidance in animal welfare. Freedom from hunger, thirst and malnutrition. Freedom from fear and distress. Freedom from physical and thermal discomfort. Freedom from pain, injury and disease. And freedom to express normal patterns of behaviour. However, note the word guidance. Even though this is placed in the overarching Australian Animal Welfare Strategy, they certainly do not reflect our current animal welfare laws. Access to the legal system, recognition of the personhood of animals. This is a controversial issue amongst animal lawyers. There are those who argue that animals should be recognised as legal persons, much in the same way that other non-humans, such as companies, are deemed to be legal persons. In brief, this view posits that civil wrongs should be litigated by those animals that are directly injured and not indirectly by humans with human-centric concerns. If animals are the subject of laws designed in theory to protect them, why should they not be granted plaintiff status? This gives the animal standing, and it is thus arguably easier to obtain remedies for their injuries. Thus, it is better for a lawyer to be representing a chemically blinded rabbit than an animal welfare agency concerned about animal cruelty. Certainly, the current situation is not acceptable. At any one time, there are 5 million pigs, 80 million sheep, 10 million cows, 480 million chickens in agricultural systems, and 7 million animals used in scientific experiments. And yet, so few cases of cruelty come before the courts. The legal hurdle of overcoming standing is a major impediment. If activists cannot convince the RSPCA, the Minister for Agriculture, or the police to take action, then there is nothing that can be done. At our Northern Rivers Community Legal Centre's Animal Law and Education project, we're engaging in legal research to see how best we can conduct some strategic litigation in order to be able to establish standing. We feel that this is really important and we can't really progress until we get to that point. Participation and consultation. There may well be a time in the future when we can directly communicate with animals to find out how they would like to live their lives. I'm guessing it doesn't involve cages or electric shocks and mutilation. In the meantime, we must act in a guardianship role to best determine their needs, using the best available advice. This is still a challenge, with many animal-related industries refusing to accept that animal interests are a valid concern when planning their business models. The European Union, once again, is ahead of the game, with some improvements in animal welfare as a result of investigations into how best satisfying the 5 freedoms. Examples include the abolition and phasing out of sow stalls and battery hen cages. So, what can progressive lawyers do? We have a fine tradition of identifying injustice and exclusion. We challenge powerful institutions on behalf of those they exploit and marginalise. We run test cases to challenge unjust laws. We lobby governments for improvements to laws. We educate the community on how laws work or don't work, and we provide advice and casework to those disadvantaged by our legal system. I would argue that our current position on animals puts them as the most disadvantaged and dispossessed of any client group. Their fertility is controlled, their progeny taken and exploited for profit, their lives are made painful, brutish and short. But the exciting thing is, animal law is new and there are so many things we can do as progressive lawyers to challenge the existing situation. And one of the biggies is about challenging the legal assumption that cruelty is necessary when it is for profit. Animal welfare laws are state-based. In New South Wales, the relevant cruelty legislation is the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act. Its acronym POCTA. It has many inadequacies that are shared by other states' animal welfare laws. The most important flaw that goes to the heart of injustice is that under Section 42D. In that situation, if a defendant is able to establish that they were not acting in a manner in which the animal is unreasonably, unnecessarily, or unjustifiably inflicted with pain, then no unlawful cruelty occurred. This phrase has been interpreted to include most agricultural practices, such as mulesing, debeaking, tail docking, and much more. The criteria are based on human-centric views that cruelty is lawful if it furthers human aims. This includes producing edible animal flesh that is at its cheapest possible price. For example, intensive chicken meat producers have managed to perfect the 50-cent chicken carcass so that you and I can enjoy cheap chicken nuggets. The extreme suffering caused by the oversized breast tissue, the consequently stressed cardiovascular system, and the painful damage to the skeletal systems are all perfectly necessary. Nearly done. Cruelty is difficult to prosecute, even when it's not necessary. Governments spend virtually nothing on monitoring, investigating, and prosecuting animal cruelty. In New South Wales, the entire investigations and prosecution budgets for the RSPCA, which is the only body that prosecutes in New South Wales, their budget is $800,000 a year. They have 14,000 cruelty complaints lodged each year. This works out at $70 per investigation, and the figures are very similar in Victoria. In my Northern Rivers area, we have one inspector covering a land mass equivalent to a small European country. There are probably 7 million agricultural animals, intensively farmed animals, and companion animals in that area. In the last 5 years, we have had on average 3 cruelty prosecutions per annum. That statistic is completely out of touch with the reality on the ground. I have been absolutely challenged by the cruelty stories told to our Animal Law and Education project. We have been inundated by animal care groups begging us to help them in their quest for justice for the animals that are now in their care. And in conclusion, I quote our keynote speaker today, the former Justice Michael Kirby. He said in a recent speech at the Voiceless Animal Protection Institute, "In our shared sentience, human beings are intimately connected with other animals. Endowed with reason and speech, we are uniquely empowered to make ethical decisions and to unite for social change on behalf of others that have no voice. Exploited animals cannot protest their treatment or demand a better life. They are entirely at our mercy. So every decision of animal welfare, whether in Parliament or the supermarket, presents us with a profound test of moral character. We can turn away from uncomfortable truths and advance our economic interests, or we can fulfill that which makes us fully human. There is nothing more powerful than an idea whose time has come." Thank you.